Daniel Vallis here from InformedChristians.com, a website ministry devoted to discerning current events from a Christian perspective. Today we're going to look at the theme of Back to the Future. What is the enemy been up to over the past few months getting ready for the days of Noah that we see ahead from a biblical perspective, that they reference that same exact time period in the Back to the Future. They're working toward it too, and so today we're going to connect several dots and give you a review of what has the enemy been up to. This video assumes you have watched our Time, CERN, and the Bible video, or read the article version. And really, it is good to read both versions because the video does have some material that's not in the article, and the article does have some material that's not in the video. Other articles that you should really be familiar with before you watch this video is our Time in Tomorrowland article, as well as our Time and Back to the Future article. What we're going to go over today is we're not really going to be talking about these subjects, but we're going to be talking a lot of highlights from it that you'll need to have an understanding of to know what we're talking about. You can find links to these articles in the comment section below. Of course, standard disclaimer, this is a watch, not a prediction. I'm only sharing with you a situation report of what has been going on and what is going on right now, and what it appears the enemy is looking and getting ready to do. It's just a watch. Now, a watchman watches events and movements and passes on the intel. That is the purpose of our ministry's Situation Room, to have an understanding of the times so we can better know what we should be doing now. One of the downsides of a watchman ministry such as mine is I've been doing this for over 13 years, almost 6 days a week. I see things a lot differently than a lot of people. And unless you've been with the ministry following along the regular updates and keeping up with the news and trends, sometimes it's hard for me to explain to people or show them a big picture because I see it in my mind of the different connections from everything that we've seen and chronicled. But it can make it hard to explain someone who's new to the website or ministry or new to these subjects at all, of getting them the big picture of where we are at. Because often when I see something, it may show up on my radar and that automatically triggers a whole bunch of connections in my mind of, oh wow, I see how important something is because I automatically know all the connections. But for someone who's not familiar with the subjects or is new to it, they might not see that. So the purpose of this video today is I'm going to hold your hand in a sense and walk you through some of the major connections that have been happening this past year since the beginning of the year, of what has the enemy been up to and why it's important. And this is why you need to have read those articles to get a familiarity with it, because this video I'm going to show you how they are all connected to each other. I'm not going to be talking much about the subjects themselves, mainly on how are they connected and how have they been picking up in intensity and frequency. 2 Thessalonians 2:7 tells us, "For the mystery of iniquity doth already work. Only he who now letteth will let, until he be taken out of the way." Satan has a plan that he's been working on for thousands of years, and Jesus even warned his disciples. This is already in progress. Satan is already preparing for the end times when he will rule briefly. And for us today, we need to keep that in mind. Satan has already been at work for a long time, and he's going to be extra busy today in our times, and we should expect that, and we should be watching for that. Of him laying the foundation, of him having his disciples ready, of him getting everything ready and lined up, all his ducks in a row, so to speak, so that the moment the tribulation starts, he is raring to go. And that is part of one of the things that we as a watchman ministry are watching. We watch the enemy and we see what they're doing. Ephesians 6:12, "For we wrestle not against flesh and blood, but against principalities, against powers, against the rulers of the darkness of this world, against spiritual wickedness in high places." Notice that he lists out 4 things. There's principalities, there's powers, there's rulers of darkness, and spiritual wickedness in high places. Satan has top demons and his fallen angels in charge, and the principalities, they act as the governors. Powers, they carry out a lot of things. But he also has spiritual wickedness in high places. And this is, we can't see the spiritual realm, but we can see the proxy, the nexus of where the trick at the bottom of the chain, so to speak, of where they start interacting with his disciples in our world. And they are carrying out a lot of the plans that are handed down to them. And we see people with a lot of influence and fame, or economic influence and power in various different spheres of our world. They are used to prepare, to educate, to condition, to get different aspects of the campaign, the mystery of iniquity. It's progressing on many different fronts. And so we are keeping an eye on some of his disciples and some of the major efforts that they are using through some of these channels. Revelation 17:13 tells us, "These have one mind, and shall give their power and strength unto the beast." He's talking about the 10 kings at the last, during the tribulation, that hand over power. But this is a very important key that people need to keep in mind. These have one mind. There's a lot of rulers in this world, and people with financial power and other types of power. They are all on the same page. They are on the same mind. Satan has a lot more disciples working toward his goals than most people realize. And they can put on a good front and a good face and appear famous and likable personalities, but they have one mind. They have an agenda. They're sold to the devil a long time ago, and they think they're going to rule and reign with him. He's lied to them, of course, too, but they are using all their abilities to help get things ready for the Antichrist and Satan's iniquity campaign. But what about us as Christians, believers in Christ? 2 Corinthians 5:20, we are ambassadors for Christ. Satan's disciples are busy getting ready for Satan's kingdom. As Christians, we have a job to do too, to get ready for Christ's kingdom, living our lives to witness, to be involved in ministry, to live in light of eternity in the next world. We have a responsibility today. Are we as busy as Satan's disciples? Are they more busy for their Lord and their Master than we are for ours? We have to keep that in mind. And that is one reason we look at what's going on in the world, and it should burn a fire under us that we need to get busy and get on the stick, because we are running out of time. We are going to be held accountable as stewards. And there is much to do. So what has been going on over the past 10 months, roughly? Well, in our situation room, I've had the major highlights placed there. A lot of the information references what's in our articles, our research reports and whatnot. But in our situation room is the major highlights to refresh us of a lot of the material that we have covered. So that's what we're going to look at today. So I'm going to import into this timeline some of the prophetic highlights that have happened over the last 10 months, things having to do with prophecy, not necessarily prophetic items. But then also let's import the enemy actions that we've highlighted specifically in this situation room. There are many more that we've archived, but these are some that I definitely want to cover today and show you the connections. And you could even see, just looking at the timeline, of how they've been building in intensity to where we are right now, because Satan is getting everything ready, and he's telling his disciples, basically, buckle your seatbelt, because we are about to take off. They are expecting things to happen. They're getting ready. They're paying attention. They know what time it is. Do we? Part of what we're going to be looking at is from a prophetic perspective. What has the Lord shown his disciples, his servants, and particularly this ministry, about what the enemy has been doing? Sometimes that helps to see when and where information was revealed. The Bible tells us that in the end times, a lot more is going to be understood about prophecy. And we find ourselves at today. And it's interesting, back in mid-April, our ministry and several others noted that suddenly a lot of things clicked in regards to time, CERN, and how that fits into prophecy, and a large chunk of what appears to be Satan's main agenda and getting a lot of things done at the beginning of the tribulation time, and also involved with his lying wonders and a lot of what he's going to be doing. But the Lord gave a lot of wisdom regarding that mid-April. And that is when we wrote our Time, CERN, and the Bible article, the first one, the introductory, and then followed it up shortly with part 2, part 3. Then we wrote The Antichrist Returns. And this is an interesting article because it deals with the Antichrist himself. Then we wrote the Tribulation's Backwards Shadow, of how, just some thesis on how time might be manipulated during the tribulation. And then part 4 of Time, part 5, and Part 6. And then in June, the Circle of the Earth investigation. July, Time and Tomorrowland. August, Time and Back to the Future. And then recently in our last video, we covered how October, the period that we're coming up on to now, there are 4 specific readings in the yearly Torah reading that are literally the days of Noah and Lot. It's when they are in this section of reading about Noah and Lot. So it's over a period of 4 weeks. But then we also looked at how October 23rd would fall on the anniversary of when the biblical date of when Noah entered the ark. That was the 10th day of the 2nd month. So now let's look at some of the different operations of campaign iniquity. You know, there's different aspects of the overall campaign, and some are working in different areas than others. And so we're going to be connecting the dots and showing you which sections are focusing in the different areas, but then how they're also using this in messaging. At the beginning of the year, it was noted that the UN has declared this year, 2015, as the International Year of Light. And that caught many people's attention because who is mostly associated with light? Lucifer, the angel of light. And so that automatically piqued up our curiosity, and it was a signal to his disciples that something significant related to Lucifer and Satan and his whole plan is going to be happening this year. You know, Satan knows a lot about time, and I highly suspect he knows how much time he has. The Revelation 12 even tells us he knows exactly how much time he has at that particular point. He knows how much time there is. He just doesn't know what day Jesus Christ is coming back. But he has a pretty good idea of when he's going to be starting his agenda. And so the International Year Light references both the Antichrist, who's the avatar of Satan in a sense, and also a time target sometime within this year, setting up a general time frame for his disciples. Then also at the beginning of the year was the 2015 The Economist cover. Had a lot of symbolism in it, and one interesting, there's a lot of symbolism and a lot of people are still trying to figure it out, but one very significant thing seems to reference that events will happen near the holy days. And right now we find ourselves in a period right after the Jewish fall feast days, which are the holy days, but then also between the next one, which is October 31st, Halloween, which is Satan's holy day. So it's an interesting time frame that we find ourselves in that's referenced on the cover of this very influential magazine. Then, of course, on January 12th, CERN restarted up their equipment after a long overhaul and upgrade, but they announced the new relaunch symbolically with a key. And that is a very interesting reference to the opening the bottomless pit, the abyss. We cover that in the article. So that, there are different disciples who are working on Operation Key, opening the bottomless pit and the abyss, releasing the fallen angels, and CERN seems to be largely focusing on that. That same technology probably will also have a part in opening the veil between the spiritual world. Revelation talks about how the demonic world is going to be seen. It appears CERN is going to be part of the technology that enables that when the bottomless pit is opened. And then also it's a symbol relating to a time target. They're indicating that within this season, they call it season 2, it appears that they're going to be doing something related to the key. Going back a couple of days, Katy Perry released a commercial for Pepsi that had very specific time references, specifically to Back to the Future references. And there you have to read the article for all about this commercial cemented how what she was going to be doing here in the commercial, because there's some symbolism there, but then also what she was going to be doing at the Super Bowl halftime show. All of that you should regard as one storyline, because it's one continuous storyline straight from the commercial almost straight into the halftime show, and it's tied to Back to the Future. Even in the commercial, she shows off her time machine and tells you point blank that she's going to be bringing in a special guest with it. And with the theming and everything, it directly references the Back to the Future time machine, which finds us where we are now, because that references October 21st. And I believe that's just the general time frame very close to when they suspect things will happen. He doesn't know the day or hour, but I think it's a bookend that he's telling his disciples to look for. Then, of course, the halftime show with Katy Perry had a lot of symbolism in it relating to the Antichrist coming onto the scene, breaking through the veil, and using the particle technology and what CERN has to enable that. So that is connected again to the commercial, and you should regard those as one and the same. Then came the Oscar Awards, which had heavy theming along the same CERN idea. And notice the venues he's using for this. He's using the halftime show, the very public, high venue. Then the Oscar Awards. Satan controls Hollywood, media, and sports. They're used to distract you, but they're also used because they can get his message out to his disciples in parable form in the easiest fashion. So he will always use the most prominent venues to get out his message. And you're going to notice as we keep going further that the message is consistent. The patterns are consistent. He's weaving a very tight, recognizable pattern. And so that particular Oscar really emphasized the key in opening the bottomless pit with CERN, with the symbolism and hearken to that. Then in March, CERN, through proxy, almost in a sense, released the Symmetry video, which had a lot of symbolism referencing and implying what they were doing with contacting the demonic realm in a sense. But then it also had emphasis and subtle references to the changing of time and time ripples and time going backwards to bring someone through and to interface an avatar with the spirit beings. Very disturbing video. Then came out Disney's Home movie. And this had a lot of the same references, same patterns broken down in the articles that we covered. But as you read the articles, you find out the patterns are almost exactly what were used in Katy Perry's halftime show. Almost exactly. There's no denying that they link together, that they're almost a carbon copy of each other. And so by proxy, then, it's also linked to the subjects that the Katy Perry is linked to as well. Then shortly thereafter, on the American Idol show, which is another high visibility venue, Jennifer Lopez sang the main song from Home, but she did it again with the exact same theming that's in Home and in the Katy Perry. They're all connected. And it dealt with the time that was mentioned, especially in the song, but then also the same pattern with the aliens that was in the Katy Perry commercial and in the halftime show, and of course in the Home. Read the articles. And the aliens are going to be used in his Great Deception, Antichrist's Great Deception. And then also reference the same pattern of technology for opening the bottomless pit that will be used too. Again, linked to the halftime show. These are all linked. So already here you have some of the top 4 major venues. We're already seeing, if you look at the pictures and the articles, they use almost the exact carbon copy pattern. They're all linked. He's using his Hollywood to convey one message about the campaign iniquity and the different operations within that. And of course, it's linked to Home as well. And because it's linked by carbon copy patterns to the halftime show, it's also a reference direct linked to the October 21st, which is referenced as the time anchor in all of that. So what he's saying is all this pattern, which is tight, this is the time anchor that goes with it. October 21st is when his disciples should be looking for a lot of that to be coming together. And again, Home, a lot of the messaging in Home by itself, by proxy, is also linked to that too. On April 1st, which is April Fool's, CERN posted a blog entry entitled CERN Researchers Confirm the Existence of the Force, and it's a reference to Star Wars. And at first it appears like an April Fool's joke, but it really isn't. They regard you and I as the fools, as the sheep. In the blog post they said, with the research ongoing, many at CERN are already predicting that the Force will awaken later this year. And notice the phrasing they used. Many at CERN are already predicting the Force will awaken later this year. We'll see that again soon. Of course, that's tied directly toward opening the bottomless pit and breaking down the veil. Then in May, Symmetry released another trailer for their CERN-related video where they added a couple new clues showing how it definitely tied in with reversing time, going back in time, and still breaking the pit and the veil. Then Tomorrowland came out, and that, of course, that had all sorts of symbolism and references to Atlantis and Satan's main goal, breaking down the veil and bringing in his kingdom. I'll read our whole article on that, Time in Tomorrowland. Then shortly after that, another large venue had the exact same, almost carbon copy pattern as the other 4 major venues that he had. And this was the Eurovision over in Europe, just as big, if not bigger, than American Idol, but it used the exact same pattern, talking about opening the pit, opening a portal, opening a way to another dimension, and bringing in an Antichrist figure. And with the theming that they used, it is directly tied to Jennifer Lopez's American Idol version that she did, the messaging there, directly tied to home again as well. So all of this is very tightly tied, and that they are very particular about the set design and anything that happens in media. Directors and producers have insane attention to detail. All of this is done very deliberately. And so that makes 5 of the top public venues that he's giving a solid, consistent message out through. Then in July, we're not going to be hitting all the items here. In July, NASA made a big push on talking about Pluto. But whenever NASA or in the media, a big push is made or a big deal is made about a planet or something, always keep in mind the mythological fallen angel, false god that it refers to, because that's really why they're using it as a pattern to remind you of a particular aspect of a fallen angel god that the mythologies are based on. And so for Pluto, of course, that's referencing the god of the underworld. And so it's a reference to that the pit, the god of the pit, the abyss, the underworld, it's going to be open soon. And they're making a big push to emphasize that to Satan's disciples. Now, a couple of days before that, to underscore that, a TV series was heavily promoted at Comic-Con for Damien, a whole series about the Antichrist. People, wake up. You know, the fact that this can even be produced in a world should be a big clue of where we are at in this time and world. We are in the days of Lot and Noah. When extreme wickedness can be published on TV, that should be a severe wake-up call. Of course, that's making a reference to the Antichrist, and he's signaling to the world he's about to come onto the world. When you take it in context with all the other publishing, especially in the top 5 venues that he's given the same consistent messaging out, everything else of that underscores and echoes the main message. So now he's reinforcing, giving more specific details. He is about to come onto the scene. And then a couple days later after that, in New York City, where really nobody could miss it, they projected onto the Empire State Building the Hindu goddess Kali, the goddess of time, destruction, death, the equivalent of Shiva, which is at CERN, right in the smack middle of New York City, another main public venue. And he's showing off, this is about to come. You know, Apollyon the Destroyer is about to come into this world. And he's telling his disciples, because he wants to get them ready for it, so they can step up their game. Now, Christians, most Christians are clueless of the state of the world, and so they have no urgency to do anything for God. But Satan is making sure his disciples are aware of the time. They know the time, and they are getting busy, and they're getting ready. Are we? So the Kali goddess on Empire State Building. Direct references to changing time, opening the bottomless pit, and breaking down the veil again. And then the Fantastic Four movie came out, which had a lot of references to the CERN technology, going through dimensions, demigods, and a bunch of other things that came out right after that. And then, not too long, was an anniversary of back when the World Trade Centers were constructed. This guy strung a high wire across between the 2 towers, and he walked across them on a tightrope. And so this was the anniversary. And when you read our article, Time and Back to the Future, that is a picture of the silver cord, the veil being broken, the silver cord, the bond between the soul and the body. you'll see that reference here real soon, but it's interesting that the anniversary happened right within this time frame too. And then, of course, Star Wars The Force Awakens comes out with their trailer. I remember back in April, what did CERN say? They suspect that the Force will awaken later on in the fall, later on in the year. Now we have another reminder that the Force is awakening, and they're reminding his disciples, the Force, the mystery of iniquity, is awakening, and it's about to take power. And it is interesting if you look at, Star Wars is a massive parable. I'm not going to get into it here, but it is a massive parable. And the new figure is a Antichrist figure in the movie anyway, referencing going back to Damien and all the other clues that he's giving his disciples that he's about to come here. And then, at the same time, PlayStation came out with a game called Everybody's Gone to the Rapture. And it's about a mass disappearance of people. Now, why? This is tied to Operation Deceive. Satan knows there's going to be a rapture. There's a lot of Christians who think there's not going to be a rapture. What most Christians think of the rapture is wrong. Throw away your Left Behind books and all that stuff, please. Most Christians aren't going because they're not ready. But Satan knows that there's going to be quite a number who are leaving, and so he's conditioning people already, and he's going to be explaining it away as they're taken to the next level of consciousness and all that. He's already conditioning people with that aspect too. So he's preparing and conditioning people to that there will be people disappearing. So it's just interesting that this particular blatantly state everyone's going to the rapture. And if you read our article, I think it's Time in Tomorrowland, one of them, deals specifically with other instances where he specifically uses the word rapture. The lost world is more familiar with the rapture concept than a lot of Christians. We have plenty of articles on our website dealing with the nature from a biblical perspective, breaking down what does Christ tell his servants about when he's coming back and what responsibilities. Remember Lot's wife. Then shortly after that was the Video Music Awards ceremony, another high-profile venue which had a lot of theming that tied in with the Oscar Awards and other theming elsewhere, hinting at the opening of the bottomless pit, breaking down the veil, and a figure coming through the dimensional gateways and everything. Then in early September, an interesting artwork was set up on the River Thames in London. It's called the 4 Horsemen of the Apocalypse, and has these 4 large concrete horses set up. And it's interesting that they set it up also near Big Ben, which is a famous giant clock. And rivers are a picture of time. You've heard of water under the bridge. And water is closely associated with time. And so this is another time parable. What time is about to be altered. It is the time, but the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse will be coming onto the scene with changes in time that the Antichrist will be doing. Even a portion of the Thames River is still to this day called Isis, the goddess who plays an important role in transiting dimensions and having mastery of time. So there's a lot going on right in this one artwork. It's a very powerful message going on right there. And then, of course, the 9/11 anniversary date. A lot of symbolism involved in that we're not going to cover, breaking down the 2 towers, references breaking down the veil. And then shortly thereafter, clocks and time were very big in the news. It's pushed very heavily in the sense that this is the time. Pay attention to time. There are other articles and other major publications that all of a sudden had big emphasis on the doomsday clock. Clocks and time were being pushed real heavily all of a sudden. Why? Because he's telling his disciples, this is the 11th hour. We are at the 11th hour. The article is about a kid who tore apart a clock and passed it off as his own. And, he's a fake. The Antichrist, Lucifer, he's a fake. He has to fake everything. He has to counterfeit everything. And he's going to even try to do it with time, but he won't even be able to do it with that. But he's primarily with the messaging that this is the 11th hour and time is about to be changed too. And then just several days later, the UN had this huge light show put on the outside, projected onto it with a lot of particles. a lot of messaging that tied in very closely to the symmetry videos and CERN references too as well. And they also did because it's the year of light. But they're tying together the concepts of those operations which they've established earlier. Now they're tying it to the UN. Just like the Revelation 17 passage, they're all of one mind. And so you saw around September 23rd a lot of the heads of state and nations coming together, the Pope coming together. And I believe that was a dress rehearsal for what they expect on October 23rd. Think about that. Then right in the smack middle of that, they pushed again this clock boy because he went to the UN to meet with the delegates. So they're tying in clock time with the efforts and what's going on that they're managing there. So it's all getting really tight. And when you look at the Situation Room, you can see the intensity of what's going on, increased in volume, but also intensity. Then at the same time, the Pope visited the 9/11 memorial, tying in with a lot of symbolism there. He met with 700 religious leaders underground. You know, that reminded me of the passage in Ezekiel where God showed him the religious leaders worshiping underground in a sense, a hidden place, worshiping their false idols and gods. And then they kicked off a lot of events that weekend celebrating the International Year of Light. And again, I believe it was a dress rehearsal for what they expect to happen. Basically, it is a final get-together to make sure everyone's on the same page and ready to go for what they expect to happen soon in October. Then came out the movie The Walk, which is a historical documentary of the walking between the two towers. And that has a lot of tie-in to our article, Time and Back to the Future. There's a lot of tie-in to that. The Twin Towers have to do with time, transiting, breaking between the veil. Read the articles. There's a lot of symbolism in that. Those events and the timing and the patterns, both in the Back to the Future movies, tying to that event, but then also pointing to the event shortly thereafter on October 21st. And of course, because of those ties, it's also tied to the initial campaign kickoff of the Katy Perry messaging that was followed through it on the others. It's all tied together. And then a day or two later, in Moscow, they kicked off a huge Circle of Light festival, and they did a lot of 3D projections, some with symbolism of time, clocks, etc. And it's just interesting because they know they are running out of time. They know the tape is almost run out. And they're projecting in all the major cities and through all the major venues for Satan's disciples to finish up, make sure they're all ready because things are about to start. That's what it appears. Then Lego Dimensions released as a big video game dealing with dimensions and characters coming through them and creatures with demigod powers. We talk about that in the time videos and articles. You've heard the saying, presentation is everything. Well, timing is everything too. And then, interesting, at that same time core period, in the news was a major mention of Doc from Back to the Future, who's a Christ archetype pattern. And they were making a big deal of how he's making this cameo appearance. And they were entitling his cameo as Doc Brown Saves the World. And so here we have a figure who we cover in our Time and Back to the Future article is a picture, an archetype of Christ, an Antichrist. And now they're tying it to he's going to be coming onto the scene saving the world in the midst of all this other activity that's going on. And again, because it's in Back to the Future with that specific link, it's tying to the event that's coming very up future in the rest of that pattern. And then there's a big push for Mars. NASA made a big deal and big announcement about how they detected water flows on Mars, but they're pushing Mars. Mars suddenly came up in the media. And again, that is a reference to the four horsemen of the apocalypse because Mars is the god of war. When the Antichrist comes on the scene, he's bringing false peace, but he's also bringing wars quickly following him. So he's warning his disciples that all these events are coming up, but war is also about to break loose too. And we've seen already just since that event what's been happening with Russia, Syria, Israel, and all that. We can see things quickly getting ready to that event to go to a much higher level even. And then just a few days after that, came out the movie The Martian. Again, a big push for that war is coming. War is coming. You know, we saw this last year with the Super Bowl there, Bruno Mars. And even in his halftime show, they flashed the words, prepare, prepare. And what war happened shortly after that? The Crimean War and the Ukraine War. But this year, there's even much more emphasis. The war this year is going to be much, much bigger. And so he's warning his disciples, prepare, war is about to come. A lot of other things are about to come real quick. Then, several days after that, The Leftovers, Season 2. It's an HBO TV series started up again, acclimating people to the mass disappearance of people. Satan knows there's going to be a rapture of God's faithful watching servants who are living as though he's coming back. The Laodiceans and 5 out of the 7 churches that did not get good marks, they're staying behind. They're being left behind with the hypocrites and the unbelievers. You know, that's what Jesus told his disciples. Remember Lot's wife. But Satan knows there's going to be a whole bunch that are disappearing. And so he's acclimating people to that event that will happen. He has his own explanation that he's going to be given out when it happens, but he has to acclimate it so that they don't think, oh, wait a minute, I should read the Bible about this. No, he has to acclimate it so it takes off the shock value, but then so that he can then give them his answer for what happened. You know, this is twice in just not even 3 months. He major emphasis on the rapture is happening. So it's also a message to his servants that, hey, keep in mind this is going to happen. Don't freak out about it. It is going to happen, but it's part of the plan. We know about it. Then shortly after that, the Flash season started up again. You know, the man like lightning, associated with lightning, Lucifer. And we cover that in the articles where the technology they use in this show, direct reference to CERN technology. So all this is a direct reference to the Antichrist breaking through the veil, opening up the dimensions, etc. Then, interestingly, another movie came out called Look Who's Back. It's a German film based on Hitler waking up in modern times, becoming a celebrity and entering politics again. Hitler's always been an Antichrist type, and in our article, The Antichrist Returns, we cover a lot of other speculative things of how his type and pattern will be re-emerging in the Antichrist and be seen in the Antichrist. And it's interesting when you look at Star Wars, The Force Awakens, and you look at the theming there, and even in the other Star Wars theming, there is a definite Nazi overtone and theming to it all. And it's a conditioning aspect. Then just the next day, CERN, right after that, CERN announces that they have a new Awake mini accelerator project. The project's called Awake. You know, back in April, they told everyone, we think the Force will awake later on this year. Then Star Wars, The Force Awakens comes. And then this Hitler movie comes where he wakes up. And CERN then announced a project called Awake. Hello, people. CERN is now telling you that they're about to wake up and open up the gateway and a lot of other things. A lot is about to happen. And this is, of course, a direct tie into Star Wars The Force Awakens. And then, the next day or so, at Comic-Con, the premiere trailer for Lucifer, a new TV series, was shown. Lucifer! You know, in just 3.5 months, they announced a show about the Antichrist, a show about Lucifer. Hello, people, wake up. Get busy for God. And the same day or so, NASA made another big push for Pluto, the god of the underworld, the pit, and all that. Again, reminding them and tying it together with everything else that they've been hammering them with. And then a day later, it made the big news as a big push of, oh, it's an anniversary of Disney's Aladdin, so we got the whole cast together, and we're going to sing A Whole New World. Oh, and by the way, we're filming it at Times Square. You read the lyrics of A Whole New World. You know, it's a message, and they made sure everyone got it on Good Morning America, putting out A Whole New World is about to start. And he's telling his disciples, get ready for it. And it's going to involve time changing too as well. You know, just think about it. What's the whole story of Aladdin? Letting a genie out of the bottle. That's what CERN's trying to do. They're trying to open the bottomless pit to let the fallen angels out and the demigods. That's the whole concept. That's what he uses media for. That's what Satan is using it to condition people. He is about to let a genie out of the bottle, but it's going to be Pandora's box. Then, the same day, they also released the movie Pan. Pan is the god of the wild, the sensual lust, and he's the one who's represented with goat legs. And as the goat, the he-goat, he always represents Satan. He's equated with Cernunnos, the horned god of the underworld. There's so much pattern that he's putting out right now, letting you know Lucifer, Satan, is about to come onto the scene. Enemy activity is off the charts. And then just a few days, it's interesting how they timed this, just 2 days, I think, right after their October 21st date, is coming out Fallout 4 video game. And even in the trailer, it blatantly says on a billboard, prepare for the future. The whole trailer is about people heading into a bunker and nuclear explosions. And then the door that they show, the large door, strongly resembles CERN architecture. And it has the numbers 111 on it, which has long been associated with Satan's fake trinity. He's telling his disciples again, prepare for the future. All this other stuff, Satan, Lucifer, the Force Awakens, all that is about to happen. And right on the heels of that is going to be war. Prepare for the future. People, wake up. Christians, the hour is very late. The enemy is very, very busy. What about us? Are we busy? Or are we more concerned with stupid stuff? It is the days of Noah and Lot. We talked about in our video on the days of Noah and Lot that it appears that the rapture is about to happen in this time frame of the days of Noah and Lot. We don't know exactly what day, but it looks very close to that October 23rd date. Somewhere near, very close to that. So between now and then, could even be 7 days after that too. I doubt it though, but so sometime in this time frame, Satan is telling his disciples to expect major changes, including the rapture. Look, when we look at the patterns he's been given, he tells his disciples 4 times just this year to prepare for mass disappearance of people. In the halftime show, you can't get a bigger venue than that. They illustrate clearly the falling away. There's going to be a falling away. And it's not talking about apostasy. Read our article, What is the Falling Away? It's the rapture. It's a military term. And then in the game, everybody's going through the rapture. They emphasize and make it clear. They again reference the church is disappearing. And then in the TV series, The Leftovers, Satan knows Christians, the hypocrite Christians are going to be left behind. And they even incorporate that into the messaging. There's quote-unquote Christians in that TV series who are left behind, and they're trying to figure out why they got left behind and others got taken. Satan knows that. He's preparing his people for this and conditioning them. And he already has a stock answer that they're working on. And then even in the Back to the Future film, they made a direct tie-in that the return of the Antichrist figure and all the time manipulation thing is going to happen at the same coincide with the assembly of Christ, his church, his bride, his watching faithful bride being vacated. He has all that symbolism. And all this has been pumped out just this year too. Are you ready? Jesus told his disciples, be ye ready. Remember Lot's wife? She wasn't ready. She got left behind. And Jesus told his disciples, some servants who know better and don't get ready, they are going to be left behind. So that's also a warning for us when we read and see this information. Now, we are now held accountable for this information. We know the hour is late. What do we want to do? Are we going to sit back on our duff and just watch football and TV and just pretend as though nothing's going to happen? Just hope we make the cut? No. Get out of your life anything now that's hypocritical. Get rid of the evidence. Burn it, so to speak. And step up and serve God. Satan and his disciples are busy serving their Lord, their Master. What about us? Are they putting us to shame? Do we love our Christ Jesus? Luke 19:13. And he called his 10 servants, and delivered them 10 pounds, and said unto them, Occupy till I come. What are you doing for Christ? Are you occupying? Be sober. Don't be distracted. Don't pay attention to stupid stuff. Be sober. Be focused. Pay attention. Be vigilant. Keep sin out of your life. Put on the armor of God. Be shining bright. Be found so that when Christ comes, he can say, well done. Well done. Be ye ready. Maranatha.